You're listening to Scribble Talk, a podcast for bid and proposal professionals. My name is Bhaskar Sundram, and with my co-host,
Ashley Case.
We will be sitting down with our industry veterans to share their stories, discuss their career, and learn how to make an impact in the industry.
Today's guest is Daniel Walker, CP APMP. Daniel is currently Senior Manager, Advisory National Pursuit Team at PwC. As a digital strategist responsible for transforming pursuits into immersive experiences, Paul has managed over 750 proposals for federal and Fortune 500 entities. He specializes in whiteboarding, digital engagement, and future-proofing sales organizations. Daniel is also part of the 2022-23 APMP Board of Directors and is APMP Practitioner certified, as well as a recipient of the APMP 40 Under 40 Award. Welcome, Daniel, to Scribble Talk. Great to have you with us.
Thank you very much for having me today. I really appreciate your time and the introduction.
We're super excited to have you. If you've listened to the podcast before, you know we'd like to start in the beginning. So where were you born? Where did you grow up? And where did you go to school?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for that. So I was born, raised, and educated in the Deep South, specifically Huntsville, Alabama. I should say the Deep South U.S. So for any of you who are football fans, I'll say Roll Tide, if that means anything to anyone. Kind of moved all over the world, all over the country since then, as part of my journey in my career.
Wow. Okay. So did you go to high school? Did you move on to university? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I went to high school in Huntsville, went to the University of Alabama for 5 years, okay. Double major in finance and accounting. And that kind of led me to my movement into the pursuit industry. I did finance for a few years, did accounting for a couple of years, realized that it wasn't really for me. So had a transition probably a couple of years into my career and have been here ever since.
Wow. Okay. So the Roll Tide makes sense now. Your first job then, was it in that finance industry outside of university at least?
Yeah, absolutely. So I started in the healthcare industry, actually. So I was an accountant for a couple of healthcare companies. And then I was a financial analyst for a high-tech company for a number of years. And it was kind of interesting. I was able to sort of moonlight and do two jobs at once. So I was doing my day job 8 hours a day and then going home in the evening and doing some pursuit work after hours, which kind of helped me transition full-time into the role that I'm in now.
Oh, interesting. So that pursuit work that you were moonlighting as, was that your, kind of entree into the proposal world?
Yeah, it was. And it's funny, I kind of sought it out because I realized after a couple of years of doing accounting work, it wasn't for me. It definitely wasn't a thing that I wanted to do. It was me or that. So I said, let's look into some other options. And so found a defense contractor who was looking for having some work rewritten. So they had staffing plans, contracting plans that were sitting, on their SharePoint drive that needed to have some copy editing done. So I started doing that for maybe like an hour a week on the weekends. And it turned out they had won a big IDIQ contract and needed somebody to be a full-time pursuit manager for all their task orders. So I was able to transition over in 2010, 2011 into that role full-time.
Oh, wow. Okay. And so from there, tell us about your career timeline in the proposal world then.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's funny, I've kind of seen it from all different sides because coming from a defense contractor, that's very federal based. It's very focused on compliance. Our clients were Department of State, the Army, Navy. So, as far into the government's realm as you can go. And it was really interesting because, we had a very small organization. In the beginning, it was myself, our founder, and 3 other employees, sitting around the kitchen table, going into Fed Biz Ops on, our one laptop and finding things to bid on and then writing it together. So we grew the company, or they were able to grow the company very quickly. And in the course of about 5 or 6 years, we realized, we're not going to be able to keep this up. And I was really just kind of done with the federal sphere at that point. So an opportunity came up at PwC, which was strictly focused on commercial bids. We had a federal practice at the time. The firm has since divested that, but I knew it was going to be a good transition. But it's interesting because I went from a space where I was the only person, I was a one-person proposal shop, to here at the firm, we have a veritable army of resources. There are many pursuit managers, many coaches, And we have a large design team of, I don't even know how many people, but dozens, perhaps hundreds of people that can go into our support infrastructure. So it's been interesting to see it from both sides, where I was responsible for everything and had to do almost every bit of work on my own, to now being part of this large ecosystem where I can have so many great colleagues to rely on.
Yeah, absolutely. And then also that transition from federal to commercial, right? I'm sure there's tons of differences between those types of pursuits.
Oh, absolutely. And I think the main thing you look at is, you have these big federal jobs that are, it's so regimented, it's so precise, here's what we want, here's the page count, here's exactly what we need to do. The commercial world, it's a completely different space. It can be, we could have no RFP. I mean, it is not uncommon at all for someone to come to us and say, hey, I had a conversation with a stakeholder at a client. We would like to write up something to go after this. And so you have much more freedom, much more flexibility, and quite honestly, more creativity to do whatever you want to do. But the upshot to that is, you also have less rigor to the process. So controlling scope, controlling expectations becomes a little more of a challenge.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense for sure. So tell us a little bit about immersive experiences in pursuits.
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing we realized going in, this is probably predating the pandemic, but I'd say the pandemic accelerated this trend, is if you think about how people consume information today, it's very different than it was even a couple of years ago. You're not really picking up a magazine, you're not looking at, a large newspaper, you're not going to be, going in depth into a lot of information. Things have really changed, right? You're going to look at things on your phone, you're going to look at, it's a Twitterverse and 140 characters. And so we've realized that we've got to reach our audiences in different ways. And that means multiple touch points. That means changing a deck that we might send from something that's large and dense and 200 pages into something that's broken up into multiple parts, for example. So to answer your question about an immersive experience, I mean, I would define that as a multi-channel approach that leverages several digital platforms. So you may have a deck that has QR codes in it that I can then open videos. I might have a summary to that deck that I click down into, so it's still long, but you think about opening a magazine on an iPad, you don't just thumb through the content, you've got an interactive table of contents, you tap, you click down, right? So it's adding in these elements to keep the audience engaged without having them dig through lots of printed pages or scroll through a 200-page PDF to find what they need.
That is so cool, and I wish that was something in federal pursuits for sure. Can you share some of your experiences on some of these digital engagements?
Yeah, absolutely. And it varies too, because you look at orals, that's also a very different thing. One of the challenges we run into right now is you plan for having an in-person event and all of a sudden you're not able to do so. I mean, even with the recent uptick because of Omicron, there's been a lot of conferences that are canceled, scaled back. So to me, that experience is a couple of things. It's what I described. That might be how a digital pursuit works, right? It's getting different things in front of the client. It's doing research on the client and saying, we know someone is definitely an auditory learner, right? So it's maybe recording a voiceover for that page and putting it on there. And then if I were to go to orals, it might be taking that same voiceover, expanding that into a video and having that play as my kickoff to orals. Or it could be, if I have half the people sitting in the room with me and half the people are remote, giving them a common place to collaborate. So emailing out like a placemat, for example, and having it interactive. So, we have a deck that we go into, we work together, maybe we do an icebreaker where we pull everybody onto a whiteboard, and the folks who are remote are in the same space as the people sitting in the room. They all do the exercise together. It's really about reaching people where they are and bridging the gap between the physical world and the digital world.
Wow, how interesting. And so is this more in kind of like your orals proposals, or is this in the kind of the pursuit stage where you're still in kind of capturing the opportunities? Well, when does this come into play, or is it all of the above?
It really is as early as possible, because you can think about it from the perspective of pre-sales. Maybe I'm curating my social media presence to go after a certain opportunity, and then that message carries through the entire end-to-end process. But the advice I'd give teams is really try to think about this early on as part of your overall strategy, and what can you do to have equity both in the proposal and outside of it in orals. Other thing we think about with this is there's a very strong accessibility component to it, because we hear, a lot of times, oh, the font is too small in a proposal, I can't read it. Or maybe somebody's, they have a disability where they have, trouble reading a page, right? But these technologies can really bridge that gap and make the information more accessible. So, you might do a recording of what's on the page and speak slowly, speak clearly. That solves two things. It lets somebody, say I'm sitting on a train, I don't have time to read the document, just pop in my earbuds, I get what I need. But also someone who, maybe has a small screen, they're trying to read, complex deck on their phone. Okay, I pull that up, I listen to it, right? So it's bringing information to people in new ways, but also making sure that it's accessible to everyone, regardless of their ability to consume the information.
Wow. Yeah. And not just disabilities, but just their circumstance at the time, right? So talking about a little screen versus, a big screen computer or
Yeah, exactly. Or, put yourself in the shoes of a reviewer, right? Like if they maybe don't have time to read a large document, they're going to the gym, they can pull up a video of someone who's talking through a segment of the pursuit and play it on, have a playlist of videos, right? They get on the elliptical, they listen to the videos, they watch them, right? They get everything that they need without having to dig into a large document.
Yeah, super, super cool. So it sounds like you've worked on some pretty interesting opportunities. Are there any that kind of stand out in your mind that you can share a little bit about?
I can't get into specifics of particular ones, but what I can do is just kind of give some observations that I've had over the years that I've been doing this. We have we work on a lot of complex engagements where maybe the scope changes midstream, or different stakeholders come in with a different point of view, and it keeps us on our toes, right? It keeps things moving forward. And so one thing that I would caution teams, if you're thinking about being a pursuit manager, if you're thinking about taking something to the next level, is really plan ahead and come up with a very rigorous game plan for what you're going to do. And don't just do these kind of things because it looks nice or it's fun or interesting, but tie it back to like a client hot button issue, or really be customer focused in what you're doing, so that when those scope changes happen, when someone else comes in and says, oh, well, we should maybe do a website versus a video, or add this whole other section into the pursuit, you've got a reason to stand up and say, well, no, we need to stick to our original plan. Here's why. Because you can really lose control of the process quickly, and it takes time to execute on these things well. So that's just an observation that I think has come out of some of the ones that have been more challenging.
Yeah, absolutely. I can imagine that's so important when there aren't bounds in the pursuit, the RFPs and things like that. You have to make sure that you have that intent and a reason why you're going a certain direction, so that you don't get that scope creep.
Exactly.
So let's talk a little bit about APMP. When did you find APMP and join and become a member?
Yeah, so I found APMP just before my transition into PwC. So it was 2013, 2014 timeframe. It was really when the company I was working for previously was scaling up and going through a lot of dramatic growth. And I was fortunate enough, our CEO, our founder, was really a visionary and was a bid manager for a large defense contractor before starting his own shop. So he was all about the pursuit industry. But I began to realize, if I'm going to leave here and not have this incredible mentor, I need to find external counsel, and I don't necessarily want to rely on my new employer or whoever else I'm going into to give that to me. I want to be prepared as I go into these conversations, as I begin to put myself on the market. So I discovered APMP, read the body of knowledge, kind of skimmed it, and recognized that there were a lot of things that I was not doing as well as I could and needed to up my game. So I kind of put my job search on hold. I took about 6 months, got really immersed into to the body of knowledge. I did not get certified at the time. I waited until I moved over here before I did that. But I will say APMP was a great foundation for me to learn more about the industry and find things that I didn't know, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And then tell us a little bit about APMP 40 Under 40 Award and kind of what spawned that and what that means to you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I'll take those a little bit out of order. It means a lot to me. APMP in general means a lot to me because having the certification, being able to go into, say a win theme discussion or, a large high stakes meeting and be on even footing with any SME, with any stakeholder in any organization. I think that's the power of APMP is I can stand up and say, look, you may be, a SME in your area. You are rightly recognized as an expert, but I am also an expert. And here's why. Like APMP has these award programs. They have, the certification program that has let me have that platform to stand on. And 40 Under 40 was a great part of that. We were fortunate enough to have a lot of great bids the year that I went for it. We did some internal reorganization and built some internal structures that kind of revolutionized the way we were bidding, right? It was sort of piecemeal and, getting things from different places. And so the ability for me to go to the body of knowledge, find what I needed, and then streamline our internal tools, if you will, is what led me to be able to make the case that, hey, I can go for this award. And it's been incredible to see the support APMP has given us since then.
Yeah, absolutely. Very, very cool. And now as part of the board of directors, that's super exciting. I know it's a new experience starting 2022, but can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's very exciting to be seeing how the organization is changing, and if you look at things that they're doing, like the new, the survey that they did a couple of days ago around, equity, inclusion, sustainability. If you look at their growth targets that they're putting out, it's an exciting time to be part of the industry. And, what I hope to bring to them is this perspective of what it means to bid, not just today, but in, 2030 and 2040. Like the way we change, the way we consume information is going to continue to change year after year. And so getting APMP ahead of the curve and then sharing that knowledge with the industry is huge.
Yeah, absolutely. Such great insights that you're going to bring to the board. And it's so important that APMP is that kind of knowledge base, right? If they're behind the curve and they're, the industry standard, right? That's just not right. So very excited to have you and your perspectives.
Absolutely. I appreciate that. And they have been consistently ahead of the curve. I'll give APMP great credit. It's a place for us to sort of validate our thoughts and say, what is the next thing that's coming out? And the other thing that I really will give APMP credit for is the new affinity networks, the new inclusion groups that they're bringing out there. Because having been, on my own and now in a large organization, our firm has taken great strides towards diversity and inclusion. We have some great networks. We have really incredible support structures. But having been by myself as a one-person shop, I didn't have that support. I didn't have that background. And so that's where APMP can really lean in and say, look, if you're, on your own, you're a consultant, you're in a small organization, like you do not have to go this alone. You can come to APMP, you can find your people, you can really branch out and spread your wings and go for this next thing that you want to do. And we're here behind you.
Yeah, absolutely. The affinity networks are amazing and lots of different groups to be involved with and have that kind of smaller community within our community, it's really great.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, it's hard. The pursuit world is really, really difficult. And there's, time constraints. There's just all kinds of things that go into it. And so sometimes just being able to find your people and vent and say, hey, I need a minute and here's what I'm going through. Like that's a tremendous gift and something that APMP is really great at providing.
Yeah, absolutely. So before we pivot into our nutters round, our surprise rapid fire questions round with Bhaskar, can you tell us 3 things not many people know about you?
Think about this for a second. Okay, yeah, 3 things. So in my spare time, I really enjoy being creative and painting and doing all kinds of abstract art, which is kind of the opposite of what people might think that I do. Okay, so yeah, I create a lot of art in my spare time, which most people probably wouldn't think that I do, just, you know, given given it's kind of the opposite of my day job. I used to be a musician in the past, and I still have a lot of my guitars in storage. I play every now and then, but you know, something that I kind of left behind me. And
no worries, we'll stick with two.
Sure?
And
okay,
if you come up with your third one, you know, off the fly, you can tell us, let us know.
Let me think through it. I'm just trying to think of what might bring this home, right? There's some other stuff that's kind of, yeah, absolutely.
Well, that's a good transition over into kind of talking about your interests and hobbies, which Bhaskar will tackle, and then, you know, some of our more fun rapid fire random questions.
Cool, lay it on me.
Thank you, Ashley. Daniel, talk us about working on these old German cars.
Yeah, so it's funny. One of the things that keeps me, I think one of the things that's critical for this role, like after I get done at the end of the day, I've got to go get my hands dirty. I've got to do something that gets me out of my chair and moving around. So I have a 25-year-old BMW. It's in pretty bad disrepair, but you know, runs, it drives, it's kind of fun to tool around in. I've had it for a number of years, and I've had about 7 or 8 other ones that are, you know, continuously sort of in pieces. So one of the things I enjoy doing, I'll go on Facebook Marketplace and, you know, kind of find something that's, you know, really run down, you know, very inexpensive, and put it in my garage, tinker around on it for a couple of years, and then let it go. So it's definitely kind of the counterbalance to my, you know, sitting in front of a computer for, you know, 8-10 hours a day, go out in the garage, you know, tear into it, and give me something to do that keeps me on my feet.
Nice, Daniel, nice. Let's officially enter the rapid random fire question round, or the Nutters round, on a honor of over 9. Daniel, do you think aliens are real?
The universe is too big for them not to be. So yes.
Yeah, fair point. Yeah, true. I know you love German cars and you're fixing it. In your opinion, Daniel, which car will you rate as perfect 10?
2000 BMW M5.
2000. Any reason why?
The engine sound. You put it on YouTube and you listen to one of those things with the muffler off. It's just, it's like a symphony to my ears.
Other than listening to 2000 BMW music, what else is there in your music playlist?
Oh my gosh, it's so diverse. So, you know, I've got a focus playlist, which is, I mentioned symphony, so I listen to a lot of classical. Okay, here's something you may not know about me. We can edit this in. I love doing karaoke. Anyway, so getting back to the music question, you know, I listen to a lot of classical to focus at work. So, you know, Beethoven, Brahms, Mozart, and then classic rock, like Queen is probably my favorite band of all time. I just got a set of really nice headphones for the Christmas holiday. So going back through all my old Tidal playlists right now and listening to things I never heard before.
Nice. Also, you play bass, right? So when did you learn how to play the music, and talk us through any interesting stories around playing bass?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is maybe another thing people don't know about me. My dad started one of the very first rock and roll bands in the Southern US. This was in the late 1950s. And so he toured for a while. The band actually evolved to become Steppenwolf, if you know who that is, the Born to be Wild sort of, you know, Easy Rider band. The genesis of it was the band that my dad started in the South. So anyway, he always played piano. He taught me how to play guitar. We used to play bass together a lot. This was when I was very young. And I don't play with a band anymore, but one thing I'll do, I've got it hanging in my office, my bass, got a couple of other guitars, Fender Stratocaster, a few others. And so a lot of times, like if I get off a call, I will, I'll mute my computer, turn my camera off, go plug in my amp, like put on some, Zeppelin or something, right? And then just play along with it for a couple of minutes to just kind of reset before my next one. So it's been a lot of fun.
Nice. So in addition to playing bass and fixing your German car, you also do fishing, Daniel. So what's the longest and the shortest time it took for you to grab your first fish? Any interesting stories around?
Oh my gosh, yeah. So the longest, there's been many days when I've gone to the pier. I live about a quarter mile from the ocean here in Florida, and we have a nice fishing pier. So, there's many days I go out there and it just doesn't, nothing happens, right? But I was out one day, it was actually cool outside. It was raining, there's big waves. I didn't expect anything to happen, right? So I throw my bait down and instantly get about a 30-inch bluefish, and everybody else around us starts catching them. Long story short, I had to catch at least 15 fish in an hour and a half. I mean, every single time you throw out there, there's boom, boom hitting. So I think the moral of the story is, I'll go on a beautiful day when, the wind's perfect. It's a great, gorgeous, perfect blue sky, do nothing. The one day I went out there with no expectations thinking, this is going to be a total waste of time. I get so many fish, I can't even take them home, and just giving them to the people around me.
That's so nice. That's nice. So which superhero have you always dreamt about to be, maybe while you were a child, or maybe now? What superhero do you really like and why?
Interesting. I would go, it's kind of untraditional. I grew up before the Marvel movies were big and the comic books wasn't something I was really into. I always loved Indiana Jones because he was sort of this, intellectual thinking man off screen, but then, when push came to shove, he would go in and actually do what needed to be done, right? But he didn't really have any superpowers. He always had to rely on his wits and his instinct and intuition to get out of sticky situations. It's not like, oh, I can fly, here I go. So I always found him really interesting.
This is going to be in your podcast headline, Daniel Walker, the Indiana Jones, right? It's going to be.
So here's something you might not know about me. Super fun fact. My last name is Walker, right? My dad is a huge Star Wars fan and wanted to name me Luke Sky.
Oh.
But my mom talked him out of it.
It would be a legend by now. I think my kid.
I know, right? Luke Skywalker. But who knew that it would still be a thing we're talking about all these years later?
Oh my God. I mean, it's always going to be there.
I know, right?
I'm sure you can try to name your kids or your kids' kids. That Walker name is always going to be there. It's just somebody needs to be named Luke Sky. That's the thing.
For sure.
So I know. So is there any nicknames that people call you by, Daniel?
Not really. I mean, not really.
Just Daniel. That's it.
Yeah. It's funny. No, not really.
So I know you're very curious, and when you always keep yourself active. So if you kind of look into so far in your life and see what's the most courageous thing you have done.
A couple of things I would, and I would think this applies to anybody who's in the industry. I wouldn't say it's courageous, but I think I guess it could be considered courageous. I think one thing that I would encourage folks to think about is, don't give up on your passion projects, right? I've been very fortunate to be able to take the things that I enjoy about my work and continue to do them even when it wasn't part of my core responsibilities. And eventually that became my primary job. So if I think about when I was, working, in an industry that maybe wasn't necessarily best suited for my talents, it wasn't, exactly where I wanted to be, finding a way to do what I enjoyed on the side and then continuously invest time into that to be able to transition over was, it was a struggle at the time. I had to give up on some personal commitments and, like I said, evenings, weekends, all that sort of thing. But eventually it does pay off. So I think having the courage to be dedicated to do the work that needs to be done, even when the end isn't really apparent. So I mean, it wasn't as if, I was working on these task orders, for example, and there was a guaranteed job offer, right? It's, no, I'm going to continue to do this and maybe something else will come up. And so I think that's the advice that I give folks is, have the courage to continue to invest in yourself and work hard, even when the outcome, isn't precisely clear.
Nicely said there, Daniel. So, Daniel, if you could only eat three foods for the rest of your life, which three foods would you choose?
Oh my gosh. I'll say cheese because I've rarely met one that I didn't like. Chicken just because of its versatility, right? I can season that anyway. And bread.
Cheese, chicken, bread.
Yeah, that's pretty much my diet most days, quite honestly.
Is there any favorite game or a toy that you used to play when you were a child?
I won't say when I was a child. Well, okay, so yes, I loved Legos. I loved building things. And this kind of goes back to my hobbies now. My mom in her basement has probably 500 Matchbox and Hot Wheels cars that I had. So loved to build things and love cars, which is not terribly dissimilar from where I am today.
Now I know why you are fixing your car. Let's blame.
Oh no! When I was little, that was what Sundays in the U.S. Auto dealerships are closed, and so my mom tells the story. She says, "Yeah, when you were little, I'd ask you anywhere you want to go, you'd go to the car dealerships and just peek through windows." So I was obsessed even then.
Oh wow, that's something there for you. So normally I ask a question, if it wasn't this profession, what other profession would you choose in your thing? I think I know the answer, but would you like to try, Daniel?
Surprisingly, it wouldn't be automotive. I would be into architecture and design. One of my loves is mid-century design and architecture. So you think about modern, homes, the low slung things. If I was in any other profession, I would be flipping houses out in the desert, fixing them up and reselling them.
Wow. I'm sure in the limited time that you have now, other than fishing and fixing, that is the category that you could.
Yeah, someday. Maybe that'll be my retirement plan. We'll see.
Got it. So do you play any sports?
I do not. I hike a lot. Like I said, I fish a lot. I ride my mountain bike, but I'm not really into any team sports.
So that's fine. Let's, for an imaginary thing, if you compete in an Olympic sport, in what sport would you compete?
Ooh, I'd go with cycling. I think that's an Olympic sport.
Yeah.
I should know this. Okay, I'll do that whenever. Yeah, I would do cycling because it's already something that I do and I enjoy, and I can respect the mental discipline that goes into, keeping yourself focused. When you've got 50 miles to go and you're on mile 26 and your legs are just crying, right? That's just such a huge rigor to go through. So that would be a lot of fun to me.
Got it. So if you could go back to history and then meet somebody, who would you like to meet?
That is a great question. I think it would be really interesting to go back to the Italian Renaissance and meet Da Vinci or some of the painters, the guys, Galileo, people who were making scientific discoveries at that time, just to kind of see their thought process, right? Because it's easy for us to get information now, but here's somebody who was, had nothing and had to come up with all these things on their own. So just to meet them and get their insights of, how did you design that telescope? How did you know to put these optics in here and look up at the sky and then see this thing, and when everybody else is thinking, maybe it's not really even there. So I think it'd be really interesting just to meet some of the inventors from that time period.
That's brilliant. And I think Ashley and I, we have asked this question. Normally the questions are random, but we have asked this question to few guests in our close to 200 odd episodes, but this is the first time somebody has told an inventor.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So
that is so interesting. Yeah, I don't know. I'm doing this off the cuff as much as I can, trying not to think too much about it. So not sure what that says, but.
Got it. That's good. So I mean, like, we are people of habits, as you know. So is there anything that you find hardest thing to give up?
It's gonna sound funny. I really love chocolates and sweets and things. And even though, I'm outside a lot, I try to take care of myself as best I can. It's just such a temptation. And so I find myself like, okay, I need a quick snack between calls. Maybe I don't have time to do anything healthy. Oh, there's a box of truffles on the kitchen table. Let's grab a couple of those. So that's kind of my guilty pleasure. Once or twice a day, I'll sneak one, even though I know they're bad for me.
Yeah, I can't sleep without having an ice cream or a chocolate bar or something. What's the point? You go to gym, train for an hour or so, and come back and have this. And I'm like, that's different. It's a balance,
That's just me. And unfortunately, my gym is right next door to a grocery store here, and they have the most amazing chocolate chip cookies. And so I can't tell you how many times like I've walked from the gym, gone over to the store to get, like a bottle of water or something to take back to the house, and grab those cookies and then like literally sit in my truck outside of the gym and have one. It's yeah, it's shameful to admit, but love them from time to time.
That's great. I mean, like, that's brilliant. So that's the end of the rapid random fire question round. Daniel, hope you enjoyed it.
Yeah, lots of fun.
So let's go back to the gratitude round. So who are the people who have been the most influential in your life and career?
My godfather is where I'd start. He just really instilled a lot of curiosity into me. He was actually an aircraft mechanic in England during World War II. And so, he would taught me a lot about mechanics, engineering. He's actually a spaceflight engineer. I would say our CEO of the company I used to work for, John Cochran, who was a very brilliant bid manager and just visionary business leader, and really molded me into who I am today. And then there's so many leaders in the firm today. I look at the leadership of our team that is just exceptional, and who I know that I can lean on with any concern. And so I've been so fortunate to have great leaders in the time that I've been in our organization that embody our values and really help lean in when I have a struggle, or even just something that maybe I haven't thought about pursuing. So it's been it's been a great journey.
Totally. That's great that you have so many people in your life there, Daniel. I wish you to get even more blessings.
Yeah, thank you so much.
So Daniel, what's one personal trait you like the most about yourself?
People tell me that I can remain calm under pressure. So I think I like that most about myself, just the ability to kind of step back and take a deep breath, think before acting is something that I've worked to build up over the years. And so I think that's probably the virtue that I would most like to be known for.
Yeah, we can imagine, definitely. So, we live in this COVID times. I think when we started this podcast, we never knew COVID would happen, because this podcast was launched 2 weeks before COVID, and March, and still lockdown here in UK, and we still talk about COVID. So what have you observed lately in these COVID times that reminded you that people are kind? Any inspiring stories, shout outs?
Yeah, I had to think about that for a second. If I look at, I guess, just how we recognize that we're all in this together. And, I had an incident, it was actually over the holiday break. I was outside of Chicago. There were really long lines, for people getting tested, and, it was just tough to get in. And I noticed that folks who are maybe by themselves were letting, like a family member who maybe had, a child who was, obviously symptomatic or something else, kind of go around and let them take their place in line. And I thought, what an amazing thing. Like, we're all here, we're all waiting. It's such a tough thing, but people are going out of their way to, help folks who clearly have a little more going on in their lives than others. And so it's been very inspiring to see, what, even just like in the moment, small acts of kindness that are still possible, because, we're recognizing that this is still an ongoing struggle and we're all in this thing together.
Totally, that's it. Right. So you look at the bids and pursuits in a very different angle here. Daniel. So what's that one common myth that you would like to debunk about this profession?
I'd say that it's people look at the proposal profession as a place that's very focused on compliance. And so I'd say the myth I'd like to debunk is you can be creative. You know, the myth is that it's impossible not to be creative. No, you can be very creative in this industry. There are so many ways to do what we do differently and to plug in things, you know, from the outside world, from marketing, from social media, right? There are just lots of interesting ways that you can take a pitch and make it something else. And so that's the thing. Like, people look at, you know, oh, I'm a proposal manager, you know, it's all about compliance and you know, herding the cats, if you will. But no, like, you're in a position of real power and authority to take this bid and make it something really interesting and fun for the client.
Nice. So what advice will you give fellow bid and proposal professionals who's looking to pursue a career similar to yours? I mean, like, of course, they are not writing bids, but in your case, you are looking at it much more in a human way, like the experiences, digital stories, etc. So what advice would you give them?
Yeah, I think that's great. You know, I think a couple of things: never lose sight of a good story, and never forget that, you know, ultimately at the end of the day, that's what's going to sell. You know, we can talk about all of the you know, add-ons, the bells and whistles, the creativity that can happen, but you know, there is definitely power to a good story and to a compelling value proposition. So, you know, get the basics down, really make sure you're covering that first, and then come in and look at, you know, additional things later on.
Brilliant advice, Daniel. Daniel, 750 plus proposals, you know, APMP 40 under 40, entering the APMP board, successful career, loss of love, family. What are you looking forward to in future?
You know, I look forward to seeing how the profession continues to evolve and what the next generation is going to bring to us. You know, you think about digital natives and people who have really been exposed to technology, to new ways of consuming information their entire lives. Like, they are going to bring so many new and interesting things into our industry. You know, you look at like a TikTok, for example, right? Who would have thought that would be a thing? These, you know, quick consumable videos. Will that be a way that we bid in the future? You know, is there possibly going to be, you know, an app that is what we use for bidding on? You know, I don't know what that is, but just seeing what the next new thing that somebody who maybe doesn't even know they're going to be in the proposal field yet, you know, they're sitting out here doing something else entirely different, but whatever that new thing that they bring in, just seeing what that is, and then how the creativity can continue to proliferate our industry. That's what keeps me going. And it really has been really been exciting and fun to see all the new and creative ways that APMP and others in our profession are bringing that to life.
So now, is there any part of your life or journey, career, or is there anything else you would like to say in the last minute or two of the episode, Daniel?
You know, I don't know specifically about me. I'm trying to think through this. Yeah, I think we covered a lot, right? And I guess in summary, you know, I would just like to say thanks to Bhaskar, you and Ashley, and really, you know, to APMP and how much I appreciate your time today, but also, you know, all the great insights that you bring to the profession. So thanks for setting this up. Thanks for, you know, all of the knowledge sharing that's taking place. It really helps me personally, and I hope that my insights today are helpful to anyone who listens.
Thank you, Daniel, so much for your time here. I mean, like, as you always say, it's a privilege and honor for you to share your time with us. Wish you, your family, your loved ones, colleagues at PwC, all the good health and happiness. Continue to inspire our industry, and stay healthy, stay happy, and keep eating your chocolates and fixing your car.
Yes, thank you so much for your time today. I do really appreciate it.
To our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. Please visit batchyscribble.com/podcast to listen to this episode and check out any of our other previously recorded episodes. If you've enjoyed today's interview, don't forget to subscribe, review, and share the Scribble Talk podcast. We hope you'll check out our next episode, where we interview another industry expert and special guest. Until then, it's Ashley Kays,
Bhaskar Sundram,
Signing off.